Penguin Random House Audio presents Becoming Dr. Seuss, Theodor Geisel and the Making of an American Imagination by Brian J. Jones. Read for you by Mike Chamberlain. Part 1. And that is a story that no one can beat. Chapter 1. Minnows into Whales, 1904 to 1921. On paper, Mulberry Street doesn't look like much. It's just another residential street on the city map of Springfield, Massachusetts, a slightly bent capital letter L lying on its back. Not much more than a pass-through between the busier streets of Union and Maple. The street itself is quiet and relatively nondescript, with very little indication that it's a major destination on a map of the American imagination. But sure enough, it was here, at least as told in the tale by Springfield's own Dr. Seuss, that a little boy named Marco used his imagination to transform a simple horse and wagon into a colorful spectacle, with a brass band pulled by an elephant-riding sultan, flanked by motorcycle policemen and confetti-dumping airplanes, while enthusiastically being reviewed by the top-hatted mayor and the town alderman. Modern-day pilgrims still flock to Mulberry Street, slowly trolling the neighborhood, windows down, hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything, that inspired the magnificent imaginations of Marco and Dr. Seuss. Residents smile knowingly, pausing over lawnmowers and trunks still filled with groceries to answer the same question from visiting wayfarers. Where did Dr. Seuss live? The answer, it seems, is as disappointing as discovering London's 221B Baker Street is actually home to a bank and never was home to Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Seuss didn't live on Mulberry Street at all. Instead, pilgrims are directed to another spot on the map, another inverted L about 2 miles south, Fairfield Street. This is where Dr. Seuss grew up, and the house he lived in for nearly 20 years, at number 74, is still there, looking much as it did during his lifetime. Parts of Springfield, in fact, look as they did during Dr. Seuss's day, or at least the places that shaped his imagination and influenced his art can still be seen if one knows where to look. A few blocks from Fairfield on Howard Street stands the old armory. Its curved stone turrets are reflected in the castles populating so many Seuss books. Over in Forest Park, the Barney Mausoleum, built with a family fortune earned by inventing and selling clamp-on ice skates, looms 2 stories above the pavement, with the curving staircases and pillared archways that would show up in the 500 hats of Bartholomew Cubbins. And the nearby Forest Park Zoo? That was where I tried to draw the animals, said Dr. Seuss later. I didn't know how to draw, so they'd come out strange. Dr. Seuss didn't produce Springfield's only creations. Founded by the Puritan William Pynchon in 1636 on a high bluff overlooking the Connecticut River, Springfield has been nurturing and stirring American imaginations for nearly 300 years. American independence was won with the reliable ammunition and gun carriages produced at the Springfield Armory beginning in 1777. A decade later, Daniel Shays, spouting a different kind of idealism, would attempt to steal muskets and ammunition from the same armory in a thwarted attempt to overthrow the government of Massachusetts. By 1795, Springfield Armory would regularly be producing the muskets that would be carried on the shoulders of American soldiers all the way through the War of 1812 and on into the Civil War. Weaponry wasn't Springfield's only specialty. True, local businessmen Horace Smith and Daniel B. Wesson, who developed the firearms company that bore their last names, had roots in the town, but so too did Charles Goodyear, who discovered and patented the process for making vulcanized rubber in a small Springfield factory in 1844. A year earlier, two industrious Springfield publishers, brothers Charles and George Merriam, acquired the rights to publish Noah Webster's An American Dictionary of the English Language, marking the founding of another iconic American brand. There was Milton Bradley, who would launch the American board game industry by cranking out the earliest incarnations of the game of life in his lithography studio in 1860. Over on State Street, the beloved and reliable Indian motorcycles would roll out of the company's Springfield factory from 1901 until 1953. Even modern sports would find their origins in the town when, in 1891, a Canadian-born physical education teacher named James Naismith, looking to keep his classes occupied through the long, cold Massachusetts winters, mounted a peach basket on a 10-foot pole in the gymnasium at the International YMCA Training School and, opting not to name the game after himself, christened the new game basketball. Springfield, then, could unequivocally and rightly stake a claim as a major landmark on the frontier of American inventiveness and imagination. Dr. Seuss himself was a construct of one of those unique American minds, a comfortable coat regularly shrugged on and off at will by one of Springfield's most famous sons, Theodor Seuss Geisel. The drop D at the end of Theodor would forever perplex journalists and copy editors, but to Theodor, Dr. Seuss himself, it wouldn't much matter. Everyone would always call him Ted. Theodor Seuss Geisel could trace his roots back to the German town of Mulhausen, a tiny village squatting on the western shore of a hairpin turn in the Enz River, in what is now the German state of Baden-Württemberg. It was here, in 1650, that Joseph Geisel, Geissel, married Katharina Loth. The extra S would be dropped in later generations, and well before Ted's grandfather was born in July 1844. Born Theodor Adolf Geisel in Mulhausen, T.A. Geisel moved to nearby Pforzheim at age 14 to enter into a 6-year apprenticeship with a local jeweler. From there, he joined the German cavalry. T.A. Geisel would always have a love for horses, and even at only 5'6", he stood tall in the saddle and served in the German army for the 7-week Austro-Prussian War that quickly sparked, flared, and burned out in the summer of 1866. My grandfather was a German cavalry officer who decided he didn't want to be one, Ted said. And in 1869, 25-year-old T.A. Geisel stepped onto the steamship Ohio at the port in Bremen, bound for the United States, where members of his extended family had secured him a job in the store of Springfield jeweler J.B. Rumrill. If Geisel missed his homeland, he seemed only ever looking forward, never back. In 1871, he married Christine Schmalzel, another recent German immigrant 4 years his junior. 2 children would follow shortly. In 1875, he became an American citizen. T.A. built a reputation as a talented jeweler. In his 5 years in Springfield, he had become Springfield's go-to designer for brooches. But in 1876, he abandoned brooches for booze, giving up the jeweling trade entirely to begin a new career as a brewer. A slight jump, his grandson said archly. Pooling his savings with those of a young brewer's apprentice named Christian Kalmbach, T.A. purchased a small brick brewing plant located way out on Boston Road on the east side of town, right at the last stop on the horse-car line. While the facility they purchased was primitive and deemed feeble by locals, just a few wooden buildings that produced barely 1,000 barrels of beer annually, the proprietors of the new Kalmbach and Geisel brewery proved remarkably ambitious.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?